maximum heart rate, and we understand now how erroneous that is. But even if we induce the maximum heart rate, okay, so if we say, okay, I understand that's bogus, and so instead of that, I induce my maximum heart rate. Well, is it still as simple as taking a mere percentage? Well, no, it's not. And here's why it is not as simple as taking a mere percentage. So we have subject A and subject B. And they wish to train at 70%, because that's your classic aerobic exercise training zone. And they both have a maximum heart rate of 200 beats per minute. I just made the number up, but I chose 200 because that makes the math mathless. Everybody knows that 70% of 100 is 70, therefore 70% of 200 would be 140. So 70% equals 140 beats per minute. Okay, so great, it's that simple. They didn't use this formula. They were intelligent. They understood that this does not work. They induced their maximum. They both have a maximum of 200 beats a minute, so they took 70% of 200. Well, here's the problem with that. What I didn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you now, is that subject A has a resting heart rate of 50 beats per minute, while subject B has a resting heart rate of 80 beats per minute. Wow. We've got two totally different people. We've got somebody who's physically fit, and we've got a presumably couch potato. This is the one that I may have mentioned on Monday, who gets his or her exercise working the remote control and has trained his or her dog to bring him beer, or his children if he doesn't have a dog. What's the deal with resting heart rate? Well, I'll show you. I have shown you, but it's been a while and it was in another context, so let's explore resting heart rate again. So at rest, the human heart must pump 5,250 milliliters per minute. Well, this is like any number in physiology. It's a textbook number. We say the menstrual cycle is 28 days. Nobody has exactly a 28-day menstrual cycle. Might be 27 and a half, 27 and 3/4, 28 and 1/10, might be 32, might be 26. But a textbook has a 28-day menstrual cycle. We say blood pressure is 120 over 80. Really? Is it exactly 120 over 80? And what if it's 119 over 81? Does that mean you're abnormal? No. Textbook numbers. So this is a textbook number. This number is the product. What's that mean? The result of what's a math term?
Multiplication.
Yeah, you multiply. So it's the product of heart rate, which is number of beats per minute, okay, like these numbers, and stroke volume. Stroke volume is volume ejected per beat. this volume that must be pumped per minute is called your CO. Which is cardiac output. So when we say the resting human heart must pump 5,250 mils every minute, and that's the product of heart rate and stroke volume, effectively what we're saying is that heart rate times stroke volume equals cardiac output. Now the cardiac output is fixed at rest. So there are a lot of ways to arrive at, we've got A times B equals 5,250. There are a lot of possibilities for A and B. Just like if we say A times B equals 100. But we could have 4 times 25, we could have 10 times 10, we could have 5 times 20. Okay, there's a lot of ways to arrive at 100. Well, the textbook, heart beats 70 times a minute. And the textbook's heart ejects 75 mils every time it beats. You all know that x divided by x is 1, so the beats cancel each other out. 70 times 75 is 5,250. What are we left with? Mils per minute. Mils per minute, that's the cardiac output. So the stronger someone's heart is, the better pump someone's heart is, the bigger this number becomes. And this number goes down. So this person with the resting heart rate of 50 has a stroke volume of 105. In other words, 50 times 105 gives us the 5,250 beats a minute.
For someone who's done steroids and their heart is enlarged, will they pump like
They
less?
will. They will, but that's the wrong way to do it, obviously. But yeah. Okay, this other person, now look at the equation. So I'm simply saying 5,250 divided by 80 for subject B. Their stroke volume is 66. So the real take-home point here is that you can gauge someone's fitness level by looking at their resting heart rate. This person's in good shape. This person is not in good shape. This person is, in fact, has a higher resting heart rate than the textbook. Doesn't mean they're dying or anything. It could be a reason why it's a little high. But they're certainly not in any sort of good physical condition. Well, this person is. I said these numbers have come up before in some other context. I don't remember when or why, and that's why I'm going over them as though we've never looked at them. But to show you the extreme cases, we have a few people on the planet with resting heart rates of around 32. So their stroke volume is 164. As a group, these are the Nordic skiers. As a subgroup, they're the winter biathletes. So they ski and they shoot. And if you've been skiing and you're going to stop and aim and shoot, you're not going to be very accurate. So you've got to be in such awesome shape that when you stop to shoot, your heart rate just plummets immediately. The two individuals on the planet, the only two I know of, there are other people I've read about that were 33 to 34, but Lance Armstrong and mountain runner Matt Carpenter have the lowest known resting heart rates. Of course, things change all the time. You might find somebody right now who's been documented at 29, who knows? But anyway, the take-home point here is not doing all these calculations. This is more of a second semester thing, and we take this and we run with it, and we do a lot more with it. The point here now is that subject A and subject B are totally different people. Look at their resting heart rates. This person's fit, this person is not very fit. So simply taking a percentage of their maximum is not the way to calculate someone's training zone. What you need to do this is a third number, which is mathless math to obtain. It is called heart rate reserve. HRR, heart rate reserve. Well, 200 minus 50 is 150. 200 minus 80 is 120. So your heart rate reserve shows how many points one can move from a state of rest to a state of maximum. Resting at 50, maxing out at 200. Resting at 80, maxing out at 200. So here's what you do with those numbers. We need the maximum heart rate minus the resting heart rate. We multiply that times the percent intensity, that'd be 70% in this case. Then we add the resting heart rate back to it. And that gives us the training heart rate. Now we can simplify this a little bit by saying heart rate reserve times percent intensity, because that's what this is, isn't it? Max minus rest is heart rate reserve. And then add the resting heart rate back to it. Now, heart rate monitors have become commonplace now. Some of you probably have one on right now. Counting your steps, counting counting all kinds of things, how many miles you, God, it's funny, some of the nurses get off work. I walked 6.2 miles today. Dear God, you don't have to exercise. Your job is exercise. Anyway, heart rate monitors have become commonplace, and one, of course, is necessary if you're going to engage in this type of exercise, because if you stop periodically and do this, you don't get anywhere. Also realize that it's going to be impossible to stay at a heart rate. So more realistically, you would be doing something like this.
So are you familiar, sorry to interrupt, with Orange Theory Fitness? Yeah, so it's kind of a joke. I mean, like, I'm in support of like going and working out, and you know, what they do is they try to get you to stay in the orange zone, which would be in the training zone, like keeping your heart rate in that 70-75% for a certain number of minutes for the workout, okay, like for fat burn and all that kind of thing. And so I said, oh, I should investigate this. It'd be good to do during the winter time. So I went, and it took me about one workout to realize that it's just crap, because they take that 225 minus your age and do all that, and so they calculate the zone for you to try to stay in, but I couldn't even get to their orange zone because of my level of fitness. You know what I mean? So like I had the treadmill at 12% grade running at like 10 miles an hour, and I still was not achieving the goal of what they wanted me to do.
Now, how much of that was because you didn't use your true max? You used 220 minus your
Right,
age.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It's just like a sales gimmick. It's just like another one of those things that they weren't doing it right, you know, but
Well, this is right.
yeah.
I mean, see, I mean, I know more about you than I knew a week ago, but you've probably been in shape all your life. Your maximum heart rate is much, much, much greater than 225 minus your age.
Yeah.
So Tom, 32 years old, wishes to train between 70 and 75%. Calculate. Oh, hang on, we need more information. His maximum heart rate is 191. Resting heart rate is 63. Calculate his training zone. Okay, so first of all, just building on stuff from Wednesday, it does not matter that Tom is a male, and maybe he's not, but I think Tom is more of a male name. It doesn't matter how old Tom is, because we're not going to use 220 minus his age or 225 minus his age. We've got his max. That is his max. We've got his resting. So we're going to say 191 minus 63, so that's his heart rate reserve, times 0.7. So again, and looking at the formula you wrote down a minute ago, you take the heart rate reserve, percentage of that, then you add the resting back to it. Then we're going to calculate it a second time. 191 minus 63 times 0.75. And that'll give us a training zone for him or her. we've got 129, and I always do all calculations twice, so I'm gonna do that again. So we've got 153. Since I got a second answer the second time, I'm going to do it a third time. That's the way I do math, physics, and chemistry. So don't miss problems. 191 minus 63. 70%. 63 plus. I'll do it a fourth time and make sure I get that answer one more time. I think I'm good. So his training zone for 70 to 75% is 153 to 159 beats per minute. So whether the person is swimming, biking, running in an aerobics class, try to stay right in there. Granted, if they're biking or running, when they're going uphill, they're probably going to have to slow down, because they start going uphill, they're going to exceed this number, so they're going to slow down. When they're going downhill, they're probably going to have to speed up, because they're going to drop below this number. The heart rate monitor can be set to beat at whatever, if you fall below 153, dee, oh my God, I got to speed up. Go above 159, beat, oh, I gotta slow down. So, this is the real way to do it. Number one, 220 minus your age, 225 minus your age, works for 90 to 95% of the people on the planet. Well, United States anyway. That from Wednesday. But those 90 to 95% that it works for are the sedentary people, the people who don't care and would never use it anyway. The 5 to 10% of the people in the United States of America that care, it doesn't work for. The maximum must be induced. It does not matter how old, male or female. If you're younger than me and your maximum heart rate is lower than mine, it is what it is. It's just what it is. Lesson number 2, taking a mere percentage of the max doesn't work. You have to consider the resting as well. Because what do you get when you say max minus resting? What's this called? Heart rate reserve. Representing how many points can you move from a state of rest to a state of maximum exertion. That resting heart rate has to be measured as well. You can't just guesstimate it. You could lay down on the floor, turn out the light for half an hour. The easiest thing to do is sleep with the heart rate monitor. When you wake up, look at your heart rate. This has to be a morning when the dog doesn't wake you up, the children don't wake you up, the alarm clock doesn't wake you up. You know, the alarm's set for Larry's final exam. That's not the morning to measure your resting heart rate, okay? Just one of those days, if there is one, where you just get to sleep. And whether that means you sleep in until 7 or you sleep in until noon, it's different for everybody. But one of those days. And what you'll find, if you do a running 10-day average of your resting heart rate, then you'll actually know what it truly is, and you'll see a change as you get in and out of shape. So the running 10-day average would mean at day 1 to down to day 10, write down your heart rate every one of those days, and then on day 10 you take the average. And that average is day 1 through 10. Then on day 11, you write down your heart rate, you take the average. That average is day 2 through 11. Then on day 12, you take that resting heart rate, you take the average, and that average is day 3 through 12. Running 10-day average. It's actually called a moving average. It's exactly what they do with the stock market. They use a different number of days. What you'll find if you take up an exercise program is that this average will begin to drop. Once you've pegged your exercise program, so this is what I do. I run 5 miles a day, 2 days a week. I swim an hour a day, 2 days a week. I go on a 2-hour bike ride every Sunday, and I try to go to the gym 2 days a week and just use the weight machines. So that's what I do, and I've been doing that now for 6 months, and so my 10-day average is relatively fixed, whether that means 62 or 41, it is what it is, it's relatively fixed. Let's say you see that 10-day average creep up from 45 to 50. You know what's happening? You know what's about to happen to you? You're getting a cold, or you're getting the flu. You're getting sick. You can take it to the bank. You are getting sick. Now, whether it's temporary because you have a hangover, or whether it's temporary because you ran over your cat, I don't know. But something's going on. Okay, physical stress, emotional stress, they're no different when it comes to disease. Okay, my OL, I was just trying to maximize how many people were in the room before I said this. I think I said it in the Monday lab, but I just want to try to say it as many times as I can. So Molly, well, I'll be there as well, but we're going to hold an open lab next Monday. So as you know, the classes next week are Monday and Tuesday only. There are no classes Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And since the Wednesday crew can't have lab, there's really no lab on Monday. So it's 100% optional. But the point is, for anyone that wants, one last time to study the cadaver, you can do that on Monday. So we'll have that open lab on Monday, both at 10 a.m. and then again at 3 p.m. You're welcome to come to either one, both, whatever works for you. So it was actually Molly's idea, so thanks to her. We were just trying to give you one last opportunity to look at those muscles. Okay, before we burn fat, I want to account for all ATP from energy system number 3. And I always is an awfully big word, but I typically like to wait and do this a lecture after we look at energy system number 3, because I know a lot of times some of the students do go home and rewrite their notes and make them pretty, and they study it, and so they're able to participate more. So maybe some of you even went to Target and bought the poster board and wrote it all up and made it beautiful. So anyway, get the notes out, whether they were taken in this room or they've been rewritten and are beautified. Get the notes out from energy system number 3. And let's put together a chart, an accountability table. It's almost like an audit. It's almost like a small business. So what'd you spend on your product? What'd you pay your employees? What was the light bill? How much money did you take in cash? How much did you take in, whatever, Visa cards? How much did you take in, did anyone pay you in gold or feathers? So you've got to account for everything and get the bottom line. So it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, like an audit. It's an accountability table, but of the ATP. Give yourself plenty of room. I'd take a clean sheet of paper, turn it sideways, let it match up to the board. Half a sheet's probably plenty, but anyway, don't try to cram it in on the last fourth of the page you're currently on. So let's see, in this column we're going to put the reactions. Again, this is energy system number 3, which is the complete oxidation of glucose. So the first thing we have is glycolysis. Of course, is in the cytoplasm. So glycolysis, and you know, somehow get yourself organized so you can see energy system number 3 in your notes, and as you look at it, you remember it. Probably just remember, but if you need to look at your notes, that's fine. Glycolysis is where we cut the glucose molecule in half and generate 2 molecules of pyruvate. After that, we converted each molecule of pyruvate to a molecule of acetyl coenzyme A. Now, I call it the transition reaction. I've said repeatedly that your bio teacher might have called it the preliminary step to the Krebs cycle. It doesn't matter which one you call it. That's in the mitochondria. And that glycolysis in the cytoplasm versus transition in the mitochondria is where you get into that variation in exactly how much ATP do you produce from a molecule of glucose. Sometimes the NADH made in glycolysis has to pay a fee, so to speak, to be transported into the mitochondria. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It actually depends on the tissue that we are working in. So the transition reaction, we made acetyl coenzyme A from the pyruvate, and then the acetyl coenzyme A takes us to the Krebs cycle, which of course is also in the mitochondria. Everything except glycolysis is in the mitochondria. And so what we want to do now is look at energy system number 3 in your notes and see what we spent, what we made, and how we did it in these different processes. And so that's where our columns come in. So we've got, in the first column, we'll put substrate level. ATP. And then in the next column, we'll put NADH. Now the point of the accountability table is to account for the ATP. So it's kind of like if this was a small business and we're trying to account for the bottom line in dollars. Well, if we took in some pesos, we've got to have another column where we give the dollar equivalents of the pesos. So in our next column, we'll call this ATP equivalents from NADH and the electron transport system. And of course, if there's no oxygen, there's no electron transport system, there will be no ATP equivalents. But we're not worried about that because this is energy system number 3, which is the complete oxidation of glucose. So we know we have oxygen. If it was energy system number 2, there'd be no ATP equivalents from the NADH. But if it was energy system number 2, we wouldn't have either one of these, would we? Because we'd be converting the pyruvate here into lactic acid. So these wouldn't even be in the chart. The other thing that you'll see as you look through all of those reactions is you'll see FADH. And so in the final column we want to say ATP equivalents from FADH, and that being processed by the electron transport system. Okay. The way to maximize how much you get out of this is to literally have your notes open to energy system number 3 and help me fill in the chart. If I just fill in the chart, it becomes one more nasty, messy thing to commit to memory. That's all you want, right? Great, thank you. Another chart to memorize. So let's see, as I look at my notes, I see that in glycolysis, the first thing I did was I spent 2 ATP. And as I look to the right of that, after the fork in the road, I see that I made a couple of, now write this very, very lightly because we're going to erase it in just a second. I see that I made 2 NADHs, and as I look further to the right, I see that I made 4 ATP through substrate level. Do you see that in your chart? That's what you see in mine, right? Okay, now, why did I say write very lightly? Because we're about to erase it. Now this works for me, okay? If you don't like this, don't do this, okay? That's your chart. That's your chart. But here's what works for me. The -2, the 2 we spent, okay, here's your chart. Glucose, pyruvate, pyruvate. The 2 we spent occurred here.
Yep.
The 2 NADHs, 1 is on each pathway. The 4 substrate level ATP, there's 2 here and 2 here. And I personally find it helpful to keep up with per pathway. The reason I like that is because when we're burning fat, the number of pathways changes. So in other words, for glucose, there's 2 transition reactions, right? And then what do we have? 2 Krebs cycles for glucose. But what if we're burning a fat molecule and we've got 10 Krebs cycles or 12 Krebs cycles? So I don't like to think in terms of per glucose molecule. I like to think of per pathway or per Krebs cycle. So here's the way I do this, the way I said write lightly. Now the -2 is fine because the -2 occurred here when there was a single pathway. But the next thing that happened were the NADHs, and we've got 2 pathways. So I'm going to say 1 times 2 equals 2. And the times 2 tells me, reminds me, that there were 2 pathways running. For the substrate level ATP, I'm going to say, because we had 2 here and 2 here, I'm going to say 2 times 2 equals 4. And again, if you don't like this method, don't use it, okay? It's your chart. It's got to work for you. Yours doesn't have to work for me, and mine doesn't have to work for you. And if you're still trying to figure that out, just hang on. It will become clearer as we proceed. So, what's my net here? 2. And that is actual ATP, so I'm going to circle it. Because that is actual ATP. Now again, right here I've got 1 times 2 equals 2. That's because there was 1 NADH made here and 1 NADH made there. So it's 1 per pathway times 2 pathways. 2 per pathway times 2 pathways. How many ATP, because here's our next column, ATP equivalents. So how many ATP do we generally get from 1 NADH? 3. So I'm going to say 3 times 2 pathways equals 6. Do you starting to see the times 2? And again, if you don't like it that way, don't do it that way. This is actual ATP, so I'm going to circle that. All right, let's look at our notes from Wednesday again. Mine aren't clear. Can you help me? What do you show in yours insofar as FADH and glycolysis? Nothing. Oh, that's why my page is blank. Well, if there's no FADH, there are no FADH equivalents. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but we are having open lab next Monday at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. just to give people one last chance to study the canal. Okay, so we cut the glucose in half, 2 molecules of pyruvate. We converted each pyruvate to acetyl coenzyme A, and each acetyl feeds the Krebs cycle. So from this point on, there are 2 pathways running. So there's 2 transition reactions. Yeah, there's 2 transition reactions. So in a single transition reaction, did you make any substrate level ATP? Nope. Did you make any NADH?
Yes.
How many did you make in a single transition reaction?
1.
You made 1 NADH times,
2.
and why times 2?
Because there's 2 pyruvate.
Because there's 2 transition reactions. So you made a total of 2. And again, the reason I like to do it this way in a bit, and I think it will be today. Maybe it will. Yeah, it will be today. We're going to be burning fat. And there might be 10 transition reactions. So, how many ATP is this 1 NADH worth?
3.
And how many? That's actual ATP, so it gets a red circle. I didn't make any FADH in either transition reaction. All right, the big one, Krebs cycle. Did you make any substrate level ATP?
3 DEP.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So you made how many per Krebs cycle? 1 times 2 cycles. So you made 2 for the glucose molecule. Did you make any NADHs? 3 per Krebs cycle times 2 Krebs cycles. So a total of 6. And if 1 NADH is worth 3, 3 NADHs is worth 9 times 2 cycles. So that's 18. That's ATP, so that gets a red circle. Did you make any FADH in the Krebs cycle?
Yes.
1 times 2 cycles, so you made 2. How many ATP is the 1 worth? 2 times 2 cycles, so we've got 4, and that gives a red circle. Okay, now we can add things up. So, from the complete oxidation of glucose, we've got 4 ATP that we made through substrate level. From the complete oxidation of glucose, we've got 18 plus 12, 30 ATP that we made through NADH that was processed by the electron transport system. And from the complete oxidation of glucose, we've got 4 ATP that we made through FADH that was processed by the electron transport system. And so we have a total of 38, and from Wednesday, we're working with max yield. There are cases where this, because this is in the cytoplasm, is worth 2 per NADH rather than 3. So we'd have 2 times 2 is 4, so this would be 28, that would be 36. From Biology 111, go read about it if you want to. Probably won't even ask you about it. We just work with max yield. So having this table imprinted on the inner surface of your frontal lobe, You'll be able to roll your eyes up and see it. And then you can see very, very easily, for example, that the majority of the ATP from the complete oxidation of the glucose molecule comes through the Krebs cycle, given these three choices. Another way to look at it, we could tally this way as well. So we've got 2, 6, 24. What am I missing? Oh, this isn't 2, is it? This is 8. So the majority, given these three choices, where does most of our ATP come from? Krebs cycle. Now, given these choices, most of our ATP comes through NADH. What if we combine these choices with these choices? Most of our ATP comes from NADH produced in the Krebs cycle. How many ATP do you get through NADH generated in one turn of the Krebs cycle?
12. Oh, wait.
Let's start over. How many ATP do you get through NADH generated in a single turn of the Krebs cycle? 9. How many ATP do you get through NADH in the Krebs cycle from the complete oxidation of glucose? 18. The 9 is per turn, times 2 turns gives us 18. So again, that's why I like the times 2 thing. If you don't like it, don't use it, it's your table. So this works for me. I just made it up, not in any book. Works for me. Some of you probably have one that works for you. Use it. How many ATP do you get through NADH generated in a singular? How many ATP do you get from NADH generated in a transition reaction? 3. How many ATP do you get through NADH generated in transition reactions associated with the complete oxidation of glucose?
6.
And why'd you change from 3 to 6?
2 cycles.
Because there'd be 2 transition reactions in the complete oxidation. Okay, let's burn some fat. Energy system number 4, fat burning. In your earlier notes, it is aerobic. Time, I don't know. Days, perhaps? And of course, when you get into this type of scenario, whether you are you just bought a house and you built it from the ground up, so there's no landscaping. Maybe you're doing all the landscaping yourself. So you spend Saturday after Saturday after Saturday after Saturday moving decorative rock, laying sod, putting in a fence, everything that would go into a brand new home. And so, you're working 8, 10, 12 hours a day every Saturday, week after week after week, or maybe you're doing the Leadville 100-mile trail run. My point is, some of this fat that you're burning may not be body fat, it may be fat you're consuming. Few people are going to run the Leadville 100-mile trail run and get all of their energy from Gatorade and Power Bars. I mean, if you go out there and you watch, you'll see them eat bacon cheese soup And that's probably healthy because it's fatty, okay? You can't do all of that on carbohydrates. If you were working in the yard shoveling rock, 8-10 hours on Saturday, you might love to pause for a bacon cheeseburger. You're not gonna say, no, I just want a power bar. Come on, man. You want fat. You need maximum calories. So this fat burning doesn't have to be, what we've got stored. It can be what we're consuming. So we start with something called beta oxidation. So that's the Greek letter beta of fatty acids. In terms of understanding this, that's where we start. Now, go back through your biochemistry. We actually store our fat as triglycerides. A triglyceride is a glycerol molecule with 3 fatty acids attached. We're burning a single fatty acid right now. We'll get to the whole triglyceride. So, the fatty acids, you'll recall, are these, they have the carboxyl group and then this long hydrocarbon chain. Those hydrocarbon chains are 18, 20, 22, 24 carbons long. So let's say, just for the sake of discussion in this example, a 16 carbon fatty acid. So we're going to cut that 16 carbon fatty acid up into 2 carbon units. So what you need to think about or flip through your notes and find is a 2 carbon molecule. Glycolysis, let's see, glucose is 6, pyruvate is 3, Krebs cycle, oxaloacetic is 4, citric is 6. Where's a 2 carbon molecule in there? Well, it's probably in the reaction I didn't just mention. I said glycolysis and then I said Krebs. Look at the transition reaction for me. You see a 2 carbon molecule in there? In the transition reaction, don't we go from pyruvate to acetyl? Pyruvate's 3, acetyl's 2, we give off a carbon dioxide. So when we cut this 16 carbon molecule up into 2 carbon molecules, what we actually get are 8 acetyls. 8 times 2 is 16. Now these 8 acetyls will require 8 CoAs, and so we'll end up with 8 acetyl coenzyme A's. And we'll have 8 Krebs cycles. Notice that we're merging fat, not literally fat, but products from fat. We're merging fat into the carbohydrate pathway. We already know about the transition reaction and the production of acetyl coenzyme A. We already know about the Krebs cycle. Why are we merging fat into the carbohydrate pathway? Well, because the carbohydrate pathway is the main pathway of an animal's body. Just as you know, our primary source of energy is supposed to come from carbohydrates. Glucose is our most important source of energy. It doesn't mean we eat glucose, but we derive it from the complex carbs we do eat. Yeah, the carbohydrate pathway is the main pathway of the human body. Imagine that you're looking at a road map. Entire United States. What are the main roads you're going to see on this road map of the entire United States?
The interstates.
The interstates. That's the major system of travel in the United States of America. So we're talking I-70, I-40, I-25, I-65, I-10, etc. All of the other roads intersect the interstates. So if you're leaving here and you're driving to Virginia, you're probably going to take Highway 24 to Lyman, and then you're going to get on I-70. Maybe you go to Denver, I don't know, but if you don't want to go to Denver, whatever, you get my point. The major system is the carbohydrate pathway. Everything else intersects the carbohydrate pathway. So when you study proteins, when you study nucleic acids, when you study the millions of enzymes, when you study all the fats, all the prostaglandins, all the steroids, all of the billions and billions of molecules in the human body, they all intersect the carbohydrate pathway. All right, now the cutting is worth something. If you go back to your basic biology, bond energy, it takes energy to make bonds. Energy is released when bonds are broken. So if we had this 16 carbon fatty acid and we cut it, and I know I didn't draw 16, that doesn't matter. We cut that thing here and here, energy was released. In fact, how many times did I cut the 16 carbon fatty acid to get the 8 acetyls? Huh? 7? Yeah. The cuts are called beta oxidation. I only cut it 7 times, but I got 8. Yeah. Look over here. I've got a 6 carbon chain. How many 2 carbon fragments do I get? 6 divided by 2 is 3. 1, 2, 3. How many times did I cut it? Twice. If I have a piece of string on the kitchen table, and I take a pair of scissors and I cut it in half, now I have 2 pieces of string. How many times did I cut it?
Once.
So if I have 20 carbons, and I cut it into 2 carbon units, how many 2 carbon units do I get out of a 20 carbon chain? And how many times would I cut it? 9. Always works like that. This divided by 2 equals this. This number is always 1 less. All right, once again though, it takes energy to make bonds. Energy is released when bonds are broken. Each beta oxidation generates 1 NADH and 1 FADH. And this equals how many ATP? Each beta oxidation generates 1 NADH and 1 FADH. And why 5? Because NADH is worth
3.
and FADH is worth 2. Wait a minute, that's only if the electron transport chain is running. Oh, it is, because fat burning is an aerobic process. You cannot burn fat anaerobically. The electron transport chain is running. All right, so now let's add it all up. So we've got 16 carbon fatty acids, 16 divided by 2, 8 acetyls. We had to cut it 7 times. So what's the energy here from beta oxidation? 35. We have 7 times 5 equals 35 gross from beta oxidation. What's the first thing we did to the glucose molecule when we started burning it? We blanked it. We actually blanked it twice. We energized it, didn't we? Didn't we spin 2 ATP? Glucose became glucose 6-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate, fructose 1,6-diphosphate. Didn't we go 2 in the hole right up front? And we went 2 in the hole because we had to energize the molecule. We have to do the same thing here, but it's not 2, it's 1. So minus 1 to energize. So this gives us 34 net ATP from beta oxidation. Okay, there's a lot more energy here. When we cut it in half, we got, or not in half, cut it into 2 carbon fragments, we got 8 acetyls. We took 8 enzymes, giving us 8 acetyl coenzyme A's. They feed the Krebs cycle. What's each Krebs cycle worth?
Is 5 NADH and 1 FADH. 20.
5.
No, I'm reading the wrong one. It's 3.
Yeah, Krebs cycle's 3 NADHs, 1 FADH, and 1 substrate level ATP. What's the total there in ATP equivalents for a Krebs cycle? Now that's in glucose. 12. Each Krebs cycle is worth 12. Glucose has 2 Krebs cycles, so it's 24. You see how careful you have to be, guys. So what's 1 Krebs cycle worth?
12.
Maybe you want to find it in your notes. I'm going to put this right here, then I'll erase it. But in your notes from last week, you have 3 NADs being reduced to 3 NADHs. Each NADH is worth 3. If there are 3 of them, that's 9 ATP. You have 1 of the riboflavin molecules. That's worth 2. And then you have 1 where GDP was phosphorylated into GTP, and then that phosphate was transferred from guanine to ADP, generating ATP. And so that's worth 1. So 9, 2, 1, 12. Don't you have that in your notes?
Yes.
Okay. So each Krebs cycle is worth 12. So if we've got 8 Krebs cycles, and each Krebs cycle is worth 12, what's that, 96? So now we take the 34 from the beta oxidation, and the 96 from the Krebs cycle. And if I did my math right, that's 130 ATP. And we didn't burn a molecule of fat. We didn't burn a triglyceride. We burned a 16-carbon fatty acid. Triglycerides have 3 fatty acids. And even the glucose, even the glycerol, remember the triglycerides, the fatty acids connected to glycerol. The glycerol has value. And if you keep straight in your mind that the carbohydrate pathway is the main pathway, and everything enters according to carbon number, how many carbons does glycerol have? Anyone remember? That's been a long time. 3. Glycerol has 3 carbons. So where in the carbohydrate pathway is glycerol going to enter? What 3-carbon molecule have we dealt with? Pyruvate. Glycerol is going to enter as pyruvate. And so Glycerol, well, we'll get to glycerol, and that probably won't be today. All right, very, very quickly, let's do one more of these without all of the explanation, just the math, and you'll see how absolutely mathless it is. It's the simplest thing in the world. I want you to understand it, but I also want you to be able to generate the number. And if you're wondering, the answer is you will deal with that in chemistry. 102 for those of you going that route, other chemistry classes for those of you going other routes. But if you're wondering, what if we've got an odd number of carbons? What if we've got a double bond? What if we've got a triple bond? There are rules for all that crap, okay? We're just, everything we do in here is very, very elementary, very, very superficial. So this time we're burning a 20 carbon fatty acid. Let's just see how simple this is. So 20 carbons. How many acetyls do I get? 10? How many times did I beta oxidize it?
Talk a little slower.
It's mathless. Okay. Okay, energy. That's all we care about. How many ATP do I get per beta? It's 5 per beta, isn't it? So 9 times 5 is 45. What else do I do here? Subtract 1. Where do these 10 acetyls go?
Transition.
But in terms of energy. Bottom line, energy. Krebs cycle. What's a turn of the Krebs cycle worth? So what's this worth? It's that simple. Okay, I'm not going to try to shove the triglyceride down your throat in 3 minutes. Not that it's difficult. The bottom line is we would triple this because we'd have 3 fatty acids. And then we would account for the glycerol molecule. 15. Anyway, man, there's a ton of energy in fat. Every animal on earth stores its energy as fat. Well, I mean, people don't, or we don't, sometimes we do, but we don't have to. But, you know, you look at the non-human residents of the planet, and they spend the spring, summer, and fall eating, building up their fat reserves so they can survive winter when the food is kind of scarce. And so we will burn a triglyceride on Monday. And again, the bottom line is we're going to triple this, because it's going to be 3 of these things. So we're going to do this math, then triple it, then we're going to add the glycerol. So we're going to be, you know, approaching 500. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is it, there's something negative about burning fat, right, with the ketones produced?
Yeah, if you're metabolizing too much fat, you produce ketone bodies. They're acidic. That lowers the blood pH, and you can get sick and you can die. Now, normal weight loss regimen, normal exercise regimen, that's not going to happen. We're talking about the diabetic, or we're talking about the prisoner who's not being fed. We're talking about the person who goes on some crazy fasting, starvation diet. I've got to lose 3 inches off my waist by Friday night for my high school reunion. I don't want them to know I've put on weight. You know, something crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay, so note to self. Thank you.
I'm just not. I'm not.
This whole thing still bothers you?
I can't concentrate.